You're watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture. Funding for Shalom TV has been provided by the following. And by viewers like you.
So I'm standing now with Barry Rubin. Many of you know him from his prior conversations with us on Shalom TV. First of all, you're out of this world. I want to say that in public.
Well,
and it's a pleasure to be with you in person.
Well, thank you.
Look, I do want you to comment for our audience. Everybody's talking now about the Obama speech, and then he comes here and tries to make nice. And I want to have your sense. What are the fallacies or what are the problems which many Jews don't understand?
Look, in the speech, he said 67 borders with swaps mutually agreed. That's not the best way to say it. I have no problem with that.
Agree.
There are 6 other things I have a problem with.
For example?
Not necessarily in order of importance. Number 1, his failure and refusal to deal with radical forces, with revolutionary Islamist forces, are destroying the U.S. position and the situation in the region. The failure to say that Assad should go, that we want to get rid of this Iranian regime, and not treating Arab friends better than Arab enemies. In fact, the opposite is a problem for Israel as well as for those countries. So if you're a Saudi and you were listening to that speech, you would draw the conclusion that the President of the United States wants to overthrow the government of Saudi Arabia, overthrow the government of Jordan. He made no distinction. So that's the first point. The second point is that while he did take a tougher stand on the Hamas-Fatah thing, that he didn't say, like, we're totally against this, we won't accept it. So people said, oh, well, there's a law. And yet at the same time, they tell you how they're going to get around the law. So they're going to have Hamas will choose the ministers, but they won't be members of Hamas. I mean, come on now. So if there's a government chosen by Hamas and Fatah, which there may or may not be, is the Obama administration going to cut off aid? Is it going to change its policy? I don't think it will. So that's the problem. Third, going to the UN. He took a strong stand against their going to the UN. But they have not been out campaigning in the third world on this issue. And people say, oh yeah, he made that speech for the Europeans. Well, how do you deal with the fact that the European states had already declared they weren't going to support, So was he making it for Spain? Because the British, the French, and the Germans said they weren't going to support it. So that doesn't make sense. So while they oppose the unilateral Declaration of Independence, I don't think that they've really, they have, by their weakness and uninvolvement, they have helped create the situation. If they had said to Abbas and these people privately at the beginning, if you do this, we're not going to help you. We're not going to, you use some leverage. They didn't. So now they have a mess, and Israel has a mess that they created. Fourthly of all, a small point that bothered me is Israel gets no credit for the concessions it's made and the risks it's taken. For example, Obama said, well, the Palestinians are still inciting and Israel is still building settlements. Well, might he mention that Israel stopped all construction for 9 months at his request? And then when he asked it be extended to East Jerusalem, Israel did it? So Israel is characterized as building settlements when in fact, it did what he wanted. We will not build. The Palestinians did not really come to negotiations. So this signals to Israel, why should we do anything for you? You don't recognize what we do. He didn't consult with Israel before the speech. A speech made when the Prime Minister of Israel was on his way to the United States. That's not the way you do things. This is like an insult. This is incredible. If any other president did it, George Bush did it, every front page would be making fun of him and ridiculing him. Then a little detail that I think I was the only person in the world who caught, that at the end he said, and the Israeli father whose son was killed by a terrorist said this, and the Palestinian father whose 3 daughters were killed by Israel said that. Well, in fact, I know he's referring to an incident I think happened January 16, 2009, and in that specific case, we believe that those girls were killed either because there were snipers on the Hamas snipers shooting at Israelis on the floor above them, or that explosives went off that Hamas had put there. So he is attributing the death of 3 Palestinian girls to Israel when there's a lot of reason to believe in that particular case that they died because of Hamas, and Hamas started the war. And if they can't get that detail right, I mean, if they can't even get that right, how can you respect these people in this administration that they attributed to Israel a killing? Now, they could have found incidents where Israel accidentally killed children, ways that you can't rationalize, but they didn't. And there's more, too. And it was a terrible speech, but not because of the one sentence about the borders.
Why did it upset Netanyahu so much?
The problem is the context, that this administration cannot be trusted, I'm sorry to say. If Bill Clinton or George Bush had made the same sentence, they would have said, well, we know that, but I think it was the context. But you see, also, every time the PA slaps him in the face, he pushes for more concessions to the PA. May I point out that this speech was made in the aftermath of the PA's deal with Hamas, which is an openly anti-Semitic genocidal organization that doesn't recognize Israel's existence. And yet, there's almost no criticism of the PA, and he gives them additional ground. So, I mean, this is the problem. This is the problem that it's gotten to the point. The Israeli position has been, and will continue to be, got along with President Obama, don't insult him, say nice things about him because he's going to be the president. But it's gone over a certain line. And in private, I can assure you there is zero trust or confidence in this administration. What if, let's take two realistic scenarios. Number one, what if Hamas attacks Israel as it did at the end of 2008? Israel wants to retaliate in self-defense. Can it be secure that this administration will support it? What if Israel goes into Gaza and the Egyptians say, we are going to respond militarily? Can Israel depend on this administration to protect its interests? What if the new Egyptian government tears up the peace treaty? Even they don't announce it, but they do it in practice. U.S. is the guarantor. Is the Obama administration going to cut off aid to Egypt and take a strong stand in Israel's behalf? And you can go on and on. There is no confidence in this administration. That is central. It's not over one issue, it's over 20 issues.
Last question for you. You just were part of a panel where there were differing degrees of confidence expressed in changes in the Palestinian Authority that would give one a sense that there might be hope for peace. You took a different position.
No. I wouldn't characterize it. I would say there are 2 points here. First of all, there's a difference between saying, do we believe that this PA leadership is going to make a comprehensive peace agreement with Israel? And someone said, they're very close. That is nonsense. Of course not. They're not going to make a comprehensive agreement. Do we believe that it's better if they don't go to violence and if living standards improve and they're willing to cooperate on security? Yes. So that's really the point. The second problem with this is everything could disappear in 24 hours. I mean that they've raised living standards, by the way, with huge amounts of foreign aid, probably the highest per capita foreign aid in world history. But if the security forces decide to go to violence, if the militants decide to go to violence, if the radical people, Fatah, decide to go to violence, it'll all disintegrate in one day. And nobody wants to respond to that because it's so obvious, and you want to pretend, look, you cannot build a policy on wishful thinking. especially when the risks are so high.
Barry, at bottom line, is this a border dispute?
The bottom line is a dispute over the possession of the same territory. So that's the borders, where the borders of Palestine are the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. Now, if there is the will to make peace, if there is a passionate desire on the part of the Palestinian leadership to have an independent state, then at a certain point you get to borders. But you don't even have that yet. Look, what's his name? Kawasma said, who was considered the number 2 guy in the PLO for many years, he said basically getting everything is more important than having a state. And for most leaders of Fatah, they have not changed their view. I don't say this because I'm right wing, I'm not, I'm left of center. I say this because this is what we see. And I can't tell you, I spoke to an Israeli parliamentarian. We were in a meeting together. He's a good friend. I said what I said. He said, I can't disagree with you more. You know, it's totally untrue. And then we were on afterwards. Well, of course you're right. I mean, people in Israel know this. Shimon Peres knows this. And, you know, no one should have any doubt. But they're not going to say it in public. And frankly, basically, most of the time they shouldn't say it in public. Because if you say it in public, then the response will be, oh, you don't want peace, you're our line. So you say, oh, President Obama, you're really wonderful, we like you, we disagree with this, you know, you're the I mean, yes, that is what you do. That is what you do when you're running a country. You do not seek an unnecessary quarrel with the U.S. You're not going to win it. But you nod your head, smile, and then you do what you need to do. And that's the point.
I'm still waiting for these books to come out so I get to sit with you in studio in August.
Okay.
You continue to do the
October.
Wonderful work you're doing.
Well, thank you.
And we'll chase you all the time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Barry Rubin, thank you very much.